A new month and a new vaccine. More great news coming in on the vaccination front as the U.S. now has 3 tools in its toolbox to fight the COVID-19 pandemic.
My hope is by this time next year, we're going to be back to normal, and before that, my hope.
We'll tell you what you need to know about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. We'll also touch on more of the latest developments in the medical crisis that continues to plague us even after a year.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars.
And a landing on Mars. The Perseverance lander is making itself at home on the red planet and sending back some jaw-dropping photos while looking for life on another world. And could this be a missing piece to fixing the criminal justice system? A group is organized to help those who have been incarcerated get trained for a new career and a new life. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Hal Eisner. We're a year into the pandemic here in the U.S., and finally there's light peeking through the end of that tunnel. You know, here to talk about some of the current COVID-19 news is UCLA Emergency Medical Physician Dr. Matt Waxman. He's at Olive View Hospital. He's a professor as well. Always good to talk to you, Matt. Thanks for being with us. And let's start with some recent news. What can you tell us about this Johnson & Johnson vaccine that just recently received emergency approval from the FDA? It's different than Pfizer and Moderna, correct?
Sure is, Hal, and we're super excited to have another third tool in this fight against the coronavirus. I can tell you, you and I have been talking throughout the pandemic, and I have never been so excited to have another tool, something that gives all of us hope, as you mentioned. This vaccine is based on an adenovirus, a common cold virus that doesn't make us sick, doesn't cause disease in humans, but it uses this cold virus to actually get some of the coronavirus, a tiny piece inside of us, to prime our immune systems in order to fight the virus and make antibodies. And it works really, really well. A big strength of this vaccine is that it doesn't require deep refrigeration. So you can give it out in the field, in a doctor's office, other sites. The other benefit of it is it's just one dose. And that's really good because you don't need to save half the dose for people to come back in a couple of weeks as with the other vaccines. So we're really excited. We expect about 4 million doses to ship this week.
I've got a few questions actually for you, but I want to ask you this. You know, the term buyer's remorse. Is there any reason to think that, gee, I got Moderna, I wish I'd gotten Pfizer. Gee, I got Pfizer, I wish I'd gotten Johnson & Johnson. I mean, is there any reason for that kind of a conversation in one's mind?
Absolutely not. We have a saying, which is, don't miss any opportunity to vaccinate. So, for example, I early on got a Pfizer vaccine. I would be happy to get a Johnson & Johnson vaccine or to give that vaccine to one of my patients now. In the studies, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine performed actually remarkably well. It prevented severe disease, hospitalization, or death in over 92% of the patients. It prevented any form of coronavirus in over 75% of the patients. So what we're really looking for in a vaccine is preventing hospitalizations, we're preventing deaths, and if a few patients get mild coronavirus, that's probably okay. And that's going to be true for all 3 vaccines. But this vaccine works very well and exactly what we want it to do.
What do you think of the recent UK strategy of going to one-shot doses of the vaccine to combat dangerous COVID strains moving across that country?
Yeah, so that's, something they're doing. They're being pretty nimble, and they're giving as many single-dose vaccines as they have available, partially because you don't want to waste vaccine. If you don't have that much vaccine and it's sitting around, we really want that in people's arms. If they get a second dose of the Moderna or the Pfizer a month from now, 2 months, when it's more available, that's fine, but I support that strategy.
What's your thought about what's going on in Texas? We know that the governor of Texas removed the mask requirements in that state, allowed for more indoor dining. What's your feeling about that sort of thing? Texas, of course, very different than what we have here in California.
Yeah, my gut feeling is that it's really irresponsible. I think we're at the point in the pandemic where we're down to about 70,000 new cases in the country a day, which is far lower than it was at the peak in December. And this is really not the time to take off the mask. I look at the mask as let's get used to it. It's our friend. Even if we are vaccinated, Hal, we can still be asymptomatic spreaders. We may still carry a little bit and give it to somebody who actually doesn't have a vaccine. So the vaccine is not protection from taking off your mask yet.
We've recently seen an uptick in the dangerous COVID-19 complication in kids called Miss-C, especially here in California. Is there any information on why this has suddenly become more prevalent?
Yeah, so MIS-C is multisystem inflammatory syndrome that primarily affects children. And sometimes these are kids who actually didn't have severe coronavirus, had mild, even asymptomatic coronavirus, but they got really sick. They have persistent fevers. They have inflammation in all sorts of parts of their body, the skin, the lungs, the GI tract, but most interestingly in the heart. And so, they've had cardiac complications. These cases are extremely rare. I've looked for it in the population I work in, but I have not found a case yet. There's been very few of these cases, but they are alarming and we're watching it. We have no evidence to say this is associated with a newer strain circulating in Los Angeles or California, but we're keeping our eye on it.
There's reason to think that by the end of this month of March, we could end up being moved from the purple restrictive tier to the somewhat less restrictive red tier. That puts us back in places like movie theaters and museums and other places that we have not been able to go to for 12 months. In fact, it was 12 months ago, last March in 2020, the theaters shut down. So my thought here is, I'm sure there's going to be restrictions. I'm sure we're going to be looking at, you can only have so many seats filled. You may not be able to bring food in, because of the potential of spreading germs. But what do you think about this idea of a year later, finally getting us into maybe the red and maybe some things that may feel a little more normal?
I mean, Hal, as we've talked about, we've got to get people back to work. We've got to follow the numbers. And if the numbers continue to improve, I think decreasing the restrictions slightly is very, very reasonable. And if people can be, 6, 12 feet apart in a movie theater wearing masks, as long as the numbers show it, the aggregate numbers of the number of new cases, decreased hospitalizations, I'd be supportive of that.
All right, well, Matt, we're going to go from a shot in the arm to the shot up in space. And thanks for being with us. I always enjoy talking to you. Coming up on Fox 11 News In Depth, a spectacular landing on the fourth planet from the sun. What's in store for NASA's latest Mars lander? We'll have that coming up next. Just a couple of weeks ago, we opened a new chapter in our knowledge of space. The latest Mars rover came screaming onto the red planet's atmosphere like a bullet deployed a parachute and then was delicately lowered to the surface by a rocket-powered sky crane. All quite a spectacular production, really impressive. And joining us right now, Alan Chen. Alan is the entry, descent, and landing lead on the Perseverance mission. This is hardly the first Mars mission the JPL has launched. Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about this mission? And I will tell everybody that I was at JPL when this thing landed. It was so incredibly exciting. Congratulations to you and that whole team, Alan.
Thank you. I'm very fortunate to lead the whole team that managed that landing. We worked for 8.5 years to get that 7 minutes to go right, and it went pretty right for us. So we're very happy to have a safe rover on the ground and a helicopter underneath that rover.
Well, I think that's what's incredible, because you guys worked for 8 years for this mission to Mars to land this particular rover. And that helicopter you mentioned, which is very cool, it went up on the belly of the rover, and basically it'll be like a little aerial explorer where it'll make, I think, up to 4 trips, if I'm correct, and look from the air down below at what Mars looks like. One of the cool things we've gotten out of this mission is not only the sight of Mars, but the first sound of Mars. Listen to this. I don't hear any microbials there, Alan, just to joke a little. What's that mean to you when you hear those sounds?
There's a couple of things you can actually hear in that sounds if you listen to that snippet that we took after we landed. That kind of constant sound is actually the pump. It's kind of like the heartbeat of the rover, pumping fluid around the rover to keep it the right temperature. But if you keep listening to that clip, you'll hear a gust of wind, pretty much like you hear on Earth. A wind going right by the microphone and kind of giving it a little nudge, if you will. And that's pretty cool. You can hear the winds on another world.
You know what? When I mention microbials, you are looking for evidence of microbial life. That doesn't mean you're going to look for life that's live right now, but things that are fossilized.
That's correct. Both Earth and Mars kind of followed a similar history in the past, both about 4.5 billion years old. And we know that life took hold here on Earth about 3.5 or 4 billion years ago. And we also know from our past missions like Curiosity and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and other missions that Mars was habitable back then. There was water, there were the building blocks of life. So now the question for us with Perseverance and the missions that will follow are, can we find evidence of that past life? Did life take hold on Mars at the same time that it took hold here on Earth?
One of the things I think is really interesting about this mission is it's sort of, the prelude to manned mission to Mars. And there's some experiments on here that are designed to kind of see what we can do if we do send people up to the red planet. I think one of those has to do with oxygen. Am I right about that?
That's correct. There's an instrument on board called MOXIE, which is an oxygen generator. The atmosphere of Mars is very different than that of Earth. Not only is it thinner, but it's principally carbon dioxide. There's about 95% carbon dioxide and 5% other stuff. Not enough oxygen for people to live on. So what MOXIE is actually going to do is trying to convert some of that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere into oxygen that's usable for people. So that'd be usable to breathe in or to use as an oxidizer for rockets to get back off the ground. So it's really a little bit about living off the land.
I think one of the things the acting administrator of NASA told us was that this mission itself is very different than the past rover Curiosity that's been up there, since the early 2000s?
Yeah, Curiosity actually landed in 2012, so about 8 years ago. That's pretty much a lot of the folks who worked on Curiosity came over to work on this one after we landed that one. So this really builds upon that mission. We've given it a lot of new capabilities. Although the rover looks a lot the same from the outside, it's actually a little bit bigger, a fair amount heavier, about 200 pounds heavier or so, and has a lot more capability. It's a lot smarter on the inside. It's got a lot of new cameras that are allowing us to see what Mars is really like. And it gave us the ability to land in a place as rugged and as dangerous as Jezero Crater, the place where the rover is now.
Well, there are clearly a lot of cameras, some of them for navigation, but there's one that really caught my eye, and that's one that has a laser in it. And so you can actually shoot at a rock, open it up, and then see it. Did I get that right?
Yeah, SuperCam is a laser-induced breakdown spectrometer. So what does that mean? It means that from a distance, we can actually fire a laser at a rock, vaporize the kind of edge of that rock, and see what light comes out of it. And from that light, you can figure out what that material is.
That's really mind-boggling. And so what are the goals of Perseverance? What are the things you want to accomplish in this mission?
Well, Perseverance is about seeking those signs of past life. Can we find evidence of past life? But it's really just the first leg of this grand relay race. They say, I think Sagan said, right, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And if we're going to try to find evidence of life or evidence of past life on our next door neighbor, Mars, we really want to be sure. So we need to bring that evidence back home to Earth. So this is why the Perseverance is that first leg of that relay race, to go find that evidence. And then the next missions that will follow will bring those samples back home to Earth.
And then you'll have another mission to the moon in order to try out some of the things that Perseverance is exploring with right now as part of that effort to eventually get to Mars with people?
There's a lot of technology that's being used on Perseverance, actually, that will also be able to be used on the moon. One of the key pieces of technology that helped us land in this dangerous landing site is something we call terrain relative navigation. That's the ability to basically use the cameras we have on the way down, take pictures of the landing site, and match up what we were seeing on the way down the parachute with onboard maps. That way the vehicle could figure out for herself where she was and fly to nearby safe spots. That's a technology that we want to use on the moon right away. In fact, the technology that we developed for this Mars mission will be used for our moon missions that are coming right up.
We just have under a half minute, really. What's your favorite part of this whole mission?
Well, the entry, descent, and landing system is near and dear to my heart. Nothing happens if we don't get that part right. So the fact that we managed to stick the landing and then also show the world what it was like with all the cameras that we put on there, the cameras to see the parachute, that supersonic parachute that inflates at nearly Mach 2 and inflates in 0.7 seconds, the ground rushing up at us from our rover downlook camera, and of course the sky crane system. When you see the video from the rover looking up and the descent stage looking down in that period of flight, it really looks like something out of science fiction.
It's just amazing. And I thank you so much, Alan. Again, congratulations to all the folks over there that have been involved in this project. We appreciate you being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And coming up on Fox 11 News in Depth, we take a look at a new LA County program intended to give former inmates training for a really productive re-entry into the work world. We'll explain, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Fox 11 News in Depth. I'm Hal Eisner. Los Angeles County has one of the largest populations involved in the justice system in the entire country. With more than 100,000 people returning home from prison or jail on a probation or parole supervision each year, it's vital that the county find a way to reintegrate them into society. Well, the county has an entire division devoted to reentry, and one of the newest tools in that division is called Sector, standing for Skills and Experience for the Careers of Tomorrow, Sector. Joining us to talk about this innovative program is Kate Vacanti, Senior Manager of Reentry Workforce Initiatives. That's part of the LA County Office of Diversion and Reentry. And can you explain, Kate, what this new Sector program does? And thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So the Office of Diversion and Reentry was an agency created by the LA County Board of Supervisors in 2015 to reduce involvement in the justice system and in jails, both by diverting people before they get to jail and also by providing reentry services to people to help them stay out of jail. So we're really excited to be launching the Sector program, which is a new employment program that will provide skills training and paid work experience in high growth sectors that offer career pathways and family sustaining wages for people in the justice system. So we use the term justice involvement to sort of refer to the many different ways that you can be impacted by the justice system. So that could be people coming home from prison or jail, or also on parole or probation. So this program is something that will be made available to all people with justice involvement across LA County. As you said, we have a really large population. We've got around 15,000 people in county jail on any given day. We have 30,000 people on probation. And then we also see many people returning home from state prison. So
let me ask you that those are some of the people that the program reaches, but how does unemployment affect people coming back from jail or prison?
Right. Yes. And we have seen there is a much greater rate of unemployment for people with justice system involvement, and that's seen across the country. There was a study that showed that people with justice involvement have a 27% rate of unemployment compared to, and that's about 5 times as high as the overall population across the country. So there's a number of reasons why people with justice involvement face higher levels of unemployment. It may be that they haven't had the opportunity to earn credentials, go through training, get the education that's needed to make them competitive. There are also a number of collateral consequences that people with justice involvement face, and that can be legal restrictions to the types of occupations or careers they can pursue, as well as a number of other benefits and resources that they have limited access to. And then we also know that,
of course, I started to jump in. I've got so many questions I want to ask you. How has the pandemic made it harder for justice-involved people?
Right. Well, just like everybody else, people have lost their jobs. There haven't been as many opportunities for people to find employment, especially living wage employment, which is why the Sector program is so important, to make sure that people with justice involvement also have access to opportunities to earn credentials and, get the skills that are needed by employers, especially in high growth sectors where there already is recovery and we expect to see more recovery. How
does this connect to Care First, Jail Last and the county's overall criminal justice system reform policies?
Sure. This is very connected to Care First, Jails Last. This will be, and we continue to hear from community members impacted by the justice system that employment services is one of the greatest areas of need for people that are coming home. So, we need to make sure that we have employment services that are in the community so people have the opportunity to go through training and gain the skills they need that will help them stay out of the system. And so, we're looking at providing the funding that will go into community-based services that will help save costs on the, that we will have to incarcerate fewer people if we're able to help them stay out of the system. And there's a lot of research that shows that employment is critically important in reducing recidivism and can have a direct impact on helping people stay out of the justice system.
Let me ask you a personal observation. How do you feel about this program? I'm sure you love it because it's your program, but the goals, the purposes, the mission.
I think it's extremely important. I think it's extremely important. I wouldn't be in this work if I didn't. I think that justice involved people have, as I said before, have, despite, having served their time, have completed their sentences, still face these collateral consequences that make it really challenging for them to be able to, kind of get back on their feet and stabilize and be able to provide for their families. And we know this isn't good for individuals. It's also not good. It doesn't help keep communities safer. So it's not only important for individuals, but for all of us to be able to, make sure that we're not denying opportunities and supports that everybody needs to be able to be successful and have a great career.
All right. Kate Buchanan, good luck with the program and all that goes with it. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
We'll be back on the other side of the break. Don't go away. And finally, if you haven't already, please check out my podcast. It's called What the Hal. It's on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or just go to whatthehalpodcast.com. That's it for this week's Fox 11 News in Depth. Thanks for joining us. We leave you with a few moments of pure joy with this Great Dane getting his first taste of snow in Hernando, Mississippi. Hope your week is just that good. See you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.